families. And you can. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order, if you please. It has been told me that we have a quorum. To start with, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, and we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Kasapsan nations. Calling to order, ask for approval of the agenda. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Chair, just a point of order. Those of us coming in on Zoom can only see you in the camera. So can you let us know who else is in the room with you?
Well, I'm not sure I know all these people personally to introduce them.
Fair enough. Just perhaps we get them to introduce themselves.
Can you do it for me, please? Thank you.
Okay, so today we have Jenny Seaman, Ken Johnson, Sandra Hudson, Councillor Misty Olson, and Jeffrey Bird. And then we have you, Mark Salter, and Josh Christensen online.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mark, and I am Ken Johnson. So may I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I'll put the motion forward.
Oops. So moved, seconded by Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, if any? Motion is carried. Adoption of the minutes of the meeting of May 11th, 2023. You've all received the minutes. Are there any additions or deletions to the minutes?
None that I can share.
Hearing none, I ask for a motion to adopt the minutes, please. Seconder?
Aye.
Okay, motion moved and seconded. All in favor? Unopposed? Minutes are adopted.
Chair, I just want to check in. Looks like the screen share with Josh Christensen seems to be seized up. So we might check in with him.
Yeah, Josh, you seem to be frozen in time.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, but just
Best suggestion I have is just quit and start over.
Yeah, reboot, as always.
As always.
I have here an item for public participation. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on anything on the agenda? Hearing none, we move on to activity reports from members. There is, but that'll be under new business. And no activity reports from members. And now we move on to new business. Matt Blakely will be doing a presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Matt Blakely. I'm the new senior planner, City of Colwood, and I'll be presenting on the Colwood Dairy and Cheese House Draft Heritage Conservation Plan. You can go to that slide. Oh, sorry, new here. So the purpose of the report is to provide the Heritage Commission members with the opportunity to review the draft Heritage Conservation Plan dated April 28th, 2023, regarding the relocation and restoration of the Colwood Dairy and Cheese House, and encourage members to provide any questions or comments to John Dam and associates who have prepared the Heritage Conservation Plan on behalf of Goldstream Projects and Jim McLaren Enterprises Liquidated. Submitted comments are for the benefit of the consultant and their effort to finalize the Heritage Conservation Plan prior to the City of Colwood undertaking a formal review and consideration of approval for the Heritage Conservation Plan. So just a little bit of background on the Colwood Dairy and Cheese House. The Dairy and Cheese House of Esquimalt Farm on 468 Goldstream Ave is recognized for its historic value as one of the earliest remaining settlements in BC, and for its rarity as one of only 3 buildings that remain from the Puget Sound Agricultural Company farms established near Victoria in the 1850s. Is the intention of the proposed development plan for this property to relocate the building from its original current location in the middle of the site to the southwest corner of the site on a parcel of land that was recently transferred to the City of Colwood for the purposes of creating a public park. The remaining site would then be redeveloped to accommodate the 3 proposed condominium buildings. So the masonry construction from the 1850s is rare, and the stone construction remains in its original configuration on 3 walls, the east, west, and south walls. In addition to the character defining elements that I have on the screen here, there was also there was original clay brick floor found in 2012, shortly after the completion of the statement of significance for this building. The floor is made of a brick layout, a combination of single and multi-layered wires to support the interior features used in the dairy industry at the time. It was determined that this is very unique to BC, and in addition to this layout, a central pail further indicated the design of an early water cooling system, which enhanced the function of the building, keeping the dairy projects cool in the summer heat. So some key considerations of this plan are that the Heritage Conservation Plan is based on the philosophy and directives outlined in the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places and developed in accordance with the conservation planning methodology document published by the Provincial Heritage Brands. The building will be relocated from its original current position to the southwest corner, which has recently been transferred to the City of Colwood to accommodate a future public park. With the relocation of the building and the redevelopment of the site, there will be a significant impact on the building's integrity and setting, as well as on any remaining historical evidence of this being one of the earliest settlements in British Columbia. That said, the Heritage Conservation Plan outlines the conservation policies that focus on capturing any remaining historical evidence of the early settlement that the site may have, as well as the careful preservation of the existing building. The attached plan is a draft and has been provided for members to review and comment on with the intent of assisting the consultant with the compilation of the final report. Staff encourages all members to review the report and provide any questions or comments to John Dam to ensure that this integral piece of Colwood's history is preserved and available to future generations. The final heritage conservation plan under the terms of the Heritage Protection Bylaw number 1791 and the section 219 covenant is subject to the satisfaction and approval of the city of Colwood prior to any development or building permit approvals and or work commencing on the property. And finally, the next steps. So John Dam will collect any comments or answer any questions from commission members, and then take those comments and submit a final heritage conservation plan to the city of Colwood for review and approval. The city plans to collaborate with the property owner, heritage consultant, and landscape architect to create an improved landscape plan that is more sensitive to the historical accuracy and significance of the original property than the current landscape plan that's included in the development agreement. And finally, bring forward a project plan with a process and plan for the construction of Colwood Dairy and Heritage Park, name still draft, to the Heritage Commission at a future date. And I just listed those for everybody to see. And that is all. Thank you. Actually, sorry, at this time, if John wants to add anything, I'll give him the opportunity. If not, I'll turn it over to the commission if they have any questions for John or myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blakely. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Blakely before we hear from Mr. Dam?
I have a comment on that, yeah. If I can jump in, can you hear me again?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. And thank you for the materials, very thorough. I learned a lot. It's a very comprehensive package, and I appreciate the level of detail we've been given. I just had one comment about some of the briefing materials, and I think it's the root of it is in the statement of significance document, but it keeps referring to this as one of the
I'm sorry, your volume is rather low. We can't hear you clearly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, let me see if we can get through this. But the statement of significance refers to the building as one of the earliest or oldest remaining buildings of the early settlement of Vancouver Island. And can we just be clear that it's non-Indigenous settlement of Vancouver Island, because there had been settlement here for a long, long time before. I just thought that, you know, the statement of significance can exist as an artifact of its time, but we should be a little bit more sensitive to that now, I think.
So you're asking whether there is a Indigenous presence upon this property? Is that clear?
No, I'm not. I'm mentioning that the briefing materials refer to this as one of the earliest records or sites of settlement in Vancouver Island, but it's not.
Well, it certainly dates from the late 1840s, early 1850s. There's not too many remaining from that era.
No, there aren't. It is one of the oldest, I'll give you that, but there had been settlement here for thousands of years.
Okay, so you feel that the statement of significance is not recognizing there was an Indigenous presence prior to the construction.
It does not, and the briefing materials put forth don't recognize that either. I think we can fix the briefing materials, but not the statement of significance.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Yes, I'd like to thank the member for bringing up that point. We certainly agree and will correct that information. It was intended to refer to this as an early settler building from the European settlement, certainly. So thank you for that comment.
And I'd like to support my Josh and his statement on that, and appreciate Ian's recognizing that we can make that adjustment. Just keep it all in perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, thank you, Matt, for that presentation. I think we can all agree that this is a really special building and one that how Colwood got its name. So it has a significant importance to us in so many ways. A couple of questions that I have, and forgive me if it was in this document and the report, the cost of the move for this, this cheese house, is that at the cost of the city or is that at the cost of the developer?
I thank you through the chair. It would be at the cost of the developer.
Okay. Thank you for that. Is there, and I have a couple of questions if that's okay with the rest of the committee. Is there going to be an opportunity? I didn't see in the briefing like a site map that shows sort of an overhead view of the location of where the building is proposed to be moved in comparison to where these three towers are. I think I see a gentleman sitting here with some paper in his hand. But what I'm really curious is, admittedly, I've not been on the site. I understand it is private property, so I can't just go over there and start looking around. I would love the opportunity to, if we're seriously considering moving this building, I would really like the opportunity to do a site visit just to get a sense for where it's proposed to be in relation to these buildings. I think for me personally, going through this document, anytime you're looking at moving a building like this, predated back to the mid 1800s. My concern is that moving this building is actually going to potentially be the loss of this building. I'm not convinced that it's going to be able to be moved without really damaging the integrity of the building. So I would love the opportunity, Mr. Borhill, to do a site visit with some of the committee. And I think right now those are just some of my questions, and I'll let the rest of the committee ask more questions. And if I have more, I'll certainly speak up. Thank you.
Chair, point of order. If I could just get, because Josh and I are not in the room with you all, and I'm sorry I can't be. Would it possible is when speakers at the table there identify themselves, having not met them, I don't recognize their face or voices, and there's no name tags attached to the camera shot. So the last speaker was well said, and I definitely support the proposal she puts forward. I'd love to know who it was. Thank you.
Go ahead. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I think, Councillor, did you want to just introduce yourself?
Through the chair, Mr. Salter, my name is Misty Olson, and I am currently a councillor with the city of Colwood. Thank you.
Red, there we are. So my questions are, Mr. Chair, similar to the councillors in terms of the actual new park site, and is there any design presented in this package so that we can see what sense of place is being created for the new location, and if there's any interpretation or those kinds of things, and wondering if, in terms of feasibility with the move, is there any kind of feasibility study about actually lifting that building and moving it? Will the new location, which I assume is going to be right by the road, is there any kind of long-term implications for the site in terms of the traffic rumbling and the vibration that will be created close to the road? Will that impact the integrity of the building? So I'm just wondering if those kinds of questions have been considered in like a feasibility study about moving it and what the new location is all about, both from a feasibility perspective and from a sense of place and the value. I mean, putting a park by a road, to me, doesn't sound like a place where people are going to dwell very long, So just curious about that value.
Mr. Chair, if I could, thank you. I thought it might be helpful for the commission for staff to go over a little bit more background in terms of the decisions that are before us and the process that led to us talking about the draft heritage conservation plan and the next steps. So quite a few years ago, this site was rezoned, and part of the negotiation between the city and the developer was that this building would be relocated and restored at the developer's cost, and that the land provided to the city at the developer's cost for the new site of the building. That was a decision of council that was enshrined through a rezoning amendment bylaw and a section 219 covenant. So that essentially is a contract between the city and the developer relative to the building being moved. There is also a third level of legal protection to the building through a heritage designation bylaw that the city specifically put on this lot. It specifies certain terms that include the restoration of the building, but it also allows for the development as previously approved by council to take place, and also allows for the building to be relocated. So those are issues that are already decided essentially by the city and previous decisions of council. Before us is the plan for the building to be restored within the designated space that was enshrined through those previous bylaws. So that's sort of the box that we're working within right now. I'm sure that the developer would be interested in hearing comments about how the larger site could be better contextualized with this park. However, those are things that have been determined through previous approvals. So certainly I'm not trying to throw cold water on any comments you might have. But right now we're talking about the treatment of the building within the designated space.
Chair, through to Ian, I found that a very poignant summary, because the context of why we're here is really important. And so if I can
Excuse me,
summarize.
Mark, we have other people wishing to speak.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just to Mark's point too is I don't understand exactly what you want us to assess yet. It's not on the agenda. It's not clear to me, you know, what angle you want us to approach this. Are we just assessing the plan? And as it's like, I don't understand. So can we get clarity on that before we continue the discussion? Thank you.
Through the chair, and thank you for that question, Member Byrd. Yes, so at this point, there's a covenant with the city between the developer that says that the developer must provide a plan for the conservation of this building. The approval of the plan sits with administration. So that is an administrative function that doesn't have a legal place for the Heritage Commission to weigh in. So essentially, we've created this opportunity for you to provide input to the author of the plan, Mr. Dam, so that we can facilitate a discussion between the Heritage Commission and this developer and his representative. This would be an informal process where you'd be providing input. We would expect that Mr. Dam would take it in consideration before providing the final report to staff for the administrative approval of that plan.
Thank you. And through the chair, Mr. Vorhill, my understanding was that further discussions would be undertaken today to determine the extent of the interior restoration. Because I don't think that that was something that was in that agreement between the developer and the city. So we still don't know what that cost is going to be potentially, or how involved the city is going to be investing money in the interior restoration. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
And through the chair, and thank you for that question. The interior restoration was actually conceived as part of the expectation that would be addressed through the conservation plan and the actual work to reconstruct the building. And the idea being that what's there now is recreated on the new site. Additional features that the city wanted to build into that space beyond what's there now would potentially be at the city's cost once we take ownership.
Mark, you had something?
Oh, yeah, yes, thanks, Chair. So just a clarification, and so the projects to be moved, the buildings to be moved into now a public space. Is the supposition then that once it's restored, it'll become a public access facility? That's one question. And if I just heard what Ian spoke to just now, is there going to be a cost to Colwood and the restoration, or is that all part of the original conversation to get it moved and then restored and then rehabilitated the interior so it can be a public space and people can make a learning space? That would be my two questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and through the chair. Yes, that the vision for the space is that it would have some utility beyond it just being a visual heritage feature. The proposal through the restoration plan is that it would be relocated onto modern concrete footings such that it could be used for occupation and also programming by the city. I could see some really interesting Heritage Commission meetings maybe being held at that site, or other interpretive programming yet to be determined by the city.
So I guess a question to you again, Ian, is part of this plan, is there a budget attached to it in terms of kind of the cost to this conservation work? And in the longer term, is there a commitment by the company to maintain it, say in 10, 20 years?
Thank you for that question through the chair. So on the first part of that question, the restoration, the relocation, restoration, and landscaping of the site is intended to be carried out and paid for by the developer. The long-term maintenance of the facility would fall upon the city in terms of its incorporating within its existing assets that we maintain in the long term.
Mark?
Yes, Chair. I just noticing in the draft document that's sent to us, there is an expectation for the building to be moved into a to meet the current BC building code. So that would mean that as the city acquires this asset, as it will now become, it'll meet the minimum current standards and should be in good general condition for the city to then care for going forward. It won't be inheriting any kind of liability, as I understand. Is that correct?
That certainly seems so.
Mr. Chair, I'm not an accountant, but it would be a new cost center as it relates to our overall liabilities, but not an extraordinary one relative to other similar sites that the city owns.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Blakely? Yes, please. Go ahead.
Josh looks like he's trying to say something.
Okay, good. I had a question about the park itself. And is the dairy house supposed to be the only feature that's on the park, or will it be blended with other uses?
Through the chair. Right now, it would be the main feature with some landscaping and pathways, or what's in the current plan. As I mentioned, as a potential next step, we may look at working with a heritage consultant, the property owner, and a landscape architect to improve what is currently in the development agreement. And that would potentially change what's planned for that area.
Okay.
But as of right now, it's basically the buildings, some landscaping, trees, and pathways.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, because given the significance of this structure to the sort of the heritage of Colwood, I think it's important for it to really be featured. And it would be nice for me in terms of like, to what are you restoring it to? If imagined as closely as possible to what it might have been like to be a working dairy at the time, I think that would be really cool, which may involve recreating or finding other artifacts that may come from this place or from another place to just show how people would have done things like dairy and cheese and stuff like that back then. I think that would be really great as a feature for it, and may help with some of the interpretation that could be included with the site to help people learn about its heritage as well.
Through the chair, yeah, we staff agree with that as well, and that's our intent with potentially revisiting the design, is to incorporate some of those more historic elements.
Thank you. Just before this meeting wraps up today, I was just hoping that we could perhaps ask Mr. Borhill or the developer for a copy of a bird's eye view of that property and the site that shows where the potential relocation of the cheese house is and how big that lot size is, just in comparison, just so that I can wrap my head around it, because I've not been there. So if somebody could provide that to the committee, that would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could respond to that. So what staff would like to propose is that we follow up with a part 2 with the Heritage Commission and bring forward the revised landscape plan. So far, the developer is amenable to and quite supportive of revising the plan that was agreed to previously. There's also the provision through the development agreement from the developer to the city for a certain amount of funding for heritage interpretation. So that could include some public art or some interpretive materials on site. And that could be maybe part 3 for the Heritage Commission to get involved in as we move closer to the point at which we would be designing those interpretive elements.
Anything else, Mr. Blakely?
One other thing, I'm a little worried about risk here. If we lose this building, that's a big loss and it doesn't come back. And I saw, as a risk mitigation, I think I saw that the developer has to put up 110% of the cost that would be associated with moving the thing. There's only sort of a 10% buffer in there for you if things go haywire and you've got to take that over yourself. Are there other things being done to manage that risk, or is that really the risk management response?
Well, I would have to ask the developer or Mr. Borhill if there's anything that he knows of to manage risk.
I'll take a shot, Mr. Chair, to start off, and perhaps Mr. McLaren could to jump in if he so wishes. Yes, there's a security that's required as part of the Section 219 covenant for the 110% of the cost of both relocating and the estimate from Mr. Dam for its restoration. So that security is to be collected by the city before issuance of the building permit as part of the risk mitigation approach. Obviously, this site is at risk of losing heritage value because of the very invasive nature of the conservation efforts. As Mr. Blakely pointed out, it was a balancing act by a previous council to try to facilitate development in this location. The central location of the Colwood Dairy and Cheese House makes it difficult to redevelop the site without its relocation. So it's a balancing act in this case, and one that, as I said, was decided some time ago in terms of that the relocation to facilitate the development. Additional risk mitigation would be an operational nature, I would argue, in terms of us working closely with the heritage professional that developers hired, and potentially the city hiring a third party for reviews or additional assistance if need be.
Thank you very much. I certainly recognize there is some risk in moving a masonry building. it's been done many times before. This is not unique in the world of heritage conservation. And there are certain steps that have to be taken to ensure that any damage to the character defining elements is minimal and that they are restored subsequently.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess when I was just thinking about the conservation plan and just the flow of questions and comments around this, it does seem that we are looking beyond the building, the actual structure of the building when we're thinking about conservation, yet the plan presented to us is about the building itself. And I think, you know, there's kind of a question here around, you know, will the new setting support the heritage conservation, the actual meaning of the building and the site, or will it just be something that people just continually drive by? You know, so I guess my sense is that there's just a big question mark here about the utility of the site and whether the building will stand, but, you know, assuming that everything's okay and it's moved. But at the same time, it could be something that just sits lifeless, you know, based on the location that it goes to and those kinds of things. So whereas we may save the building, we may lose any opportunity to use it as an educational piece and to create engagement with it, because maybe the, you know, so that's what I'm struggling with is I don't see enough information here that gives the broader context of what will happen to this building. So I understand that, you know, a heritage conservation plan speaks to the walls and roof and interior, but I think the flow of conversation seemed to me to speak to a larger concern.
Thank you. If I can ask a question then of staff, I understand from the documents that after this building is moved, its interpretation and the site it's moved to will be the responsibility of Colwood. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
So that any interpretation falls to Colwood and its citizens. Anything else, Mr. Blakely? Perhaps Mr. Dam, representing the opponent, the owner, would like to make a few statements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, I'm chomping at the bit a little bit here because it's my plan that's being talked about. But I think Matt did a great job summarizing what's going to happen, and I think Ian spoke really well of the particular details. But I just wanted to go back to the conservation plan, which I drafted, and I cannot emphasize enough that this is a plan for the community. It's something that I put together based on my background and experience in conserving historic buildings. But this is really where anybody who has anything that they want to have changed, added, talked about, email me, write it on the plan, send it. Like, we're all putting our ideas together. That's why the plan is just a draft at this time. I've got Jim's ideas and my ideas. Now we're welcoming everyone else's ideas. I do also want to say that the plan does speak to the site, not just the building. It's the first point in the plan is context. We don't have it finally defined yet. That's why we're talking, but there is the sense of, we are absolutely aware that we don't want this thing to be parked in Goldstream Avenue with big trucks trundling by. That's not going to do anybody any good. We really are concerned about context. We've already made some changes to what we thought would be the best idea to enhance that context. But I certainly welcome any comments if people want more done or have some ideas revisited or at least discussed on this plan. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions of Mr. Dam? Comments, please? Mark?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Dam, through the chair. Appreciate the sentiment around making this giving this building context. I read some of the rules around making changes to historic properties as was provided in the materials you shared. That is fundamentally important that the context of a building it's not lost when it's moved. Otherwise, it's not allowed to be moved, as I understand the way the rules are written. So there isn't a lot of context in the way it's located now. So moving it, you hope to reconstitute its position in cultural space and give it some proper context. I appreciate that. I'm not sure how close it will be to Goldstream Avenue or what intersections. I'd be curious to learn that. And the second part of that would be, I'm assuming that this gentleman, Mr. Dam, has some experience that can share with the commission around the success of moving such a structure. I'm a big fan of Nickel Brothers, and I've seen them do some amazing things moving houses down off beaches and stuff. This is a over 150-year-old structure. It hasn't got any rebar in it. So there must be a couple of tricks of the trade, and there must be some very skilled people involved. I'd be just curious as to learn a little bit more about how that's to be done. But I do appreciate that when he puts it back in its new location, that it's going to have a better historical value and speak to a more cultural space that'll be created around it, so as to showcase its value to our community and the history that it represents, being one of the oldest structures, being a birthplace of the name for Colwood, and that there be some recognition of that part of it as part of its new life, as I'm assuming. Having never seen it before and knowing that it's on private property, a lot of people will be excited to see it, I'm sure. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. I personally can speak of taking masonry buildings and tying them together with she-bolts and plywood and shifting them. Not as far as this one's going, but it has been done in the city before. And it's pertaining to context, moving the building is far preferable to losing a building. And that's generally my position on such things. Saanich moved one back in the 70s, which was out in Gordon Head, and moved it into Lambert Park. It was built in 1859. It's still there, still serving an excellent purpose.
I was there when it happened.
Any other questions of Mr. Dam? In that case, I'm going to ask one, if I may. We know the building is moving. We know it was used for agricultural purposes for a number of years before the farm ceased to exist, basically. But I'm wondering, pertaining the immediate grounds around it, is there any possibility of examining those with metal detectors to see if there are any artifacts lying there beneath the soil that we could use when it comes time for Colwood to interpret this building?
Certainly, once again, I believe that was touched on a bit in the conservation plan. If I can speak on your behalf here, Jim, we have certainly engaged an archaeologist to assist us to a certain degree on the process of gathering this historic site and relocating it and ensuring that any further evidence of the history of this site is meaningfully gathered together at the same time, avoiding the idea that we're just going to have a backhoe come in, pick it up and move it and everything else is lost. We are certainly taking into consideration the archaeological significance of this site as we do this work.
I thank you for the consideration. I'd like some commitment of action.
I should let Jim speak to that then.
My name is Jim McLaren. I'm the developer of the site. I'd just like to say we're 100% behind what you're trying to do. I think you have a unique opportunity that we see there. This building is 150 years old. My grandmother actually bought cheese in that particular building. We have a lot of interest in making it work. And we've gone to a lot of extent with engineers to try to move this building. It's not an easy thing to do. It has to be done with care. And everything we do, we recognize there's no mortar in that building at all. So we have to encompass that building, the walls and all in one piece so it doesn't move, bolt it together, bottom lifts and top lifts to make it work too. And we have an engineer that has designed that. We have a structural engineer that has to design a new foundation for it. And to get it up to code, we have to realize that there's new restrictions in the code. And it has to be designed properly for people to go into it. We recognize Colwood's not going to accept any liability, so the engineer stamps it and he gives us the okay that it's structurally sound. But we have to recognize that there could be some little change to that to make it work. The foundation has been designed again to try to incorporate the cheese trough that was in the side of it and the cooling system that you're talking about. Everything we've done is tried to restore it to where it was 150 years ago. And at the same time, trying to meet the new building codes, it's a difficult thing to do. We're doing our best to make it work. I just think it's a unique opportunity for everybody. I think the Historical Society has to get behind it when it's finished. We look forward to having something in front of our building that's going to be an asset to the Colwood and an asset to the development. And that's all I have to say. Thank you. I do have a plan. There's a lot of questions on what this landscaping was going to. We had our landscaper redesign the landscape. John made comment to it, and Mr. Mayor, you made comment about the trucks rolling by this thing right in this front on the street. Our proposal is to move it back a little bit so we get a nice park in front of it. And if I could go back, Ian's comment, he wants a little cow sitting out in front of this building when it's all over. So we want to do something that's right, believe me. And we're behind you 100%.
Thank you. Any questions? I have one more of staff, if I may. When this is moved and the property falls to Colwood's care, can you tell me what the zoning will be on that piece of property?
Thanks for that question, Mr. Chair. It's a comprehensive development zone currently that specifically designates this area of the site-specific zoning for the purpose of the Heritage Park. And it'll be owned by the city, and the city controls its zoning. So if the city chose to change it, that would be certainly something we could do in the future.
So that if sometime in the future someone wanted to open a cheese shop in it, could they?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly that would be at council's discretion to permit that use.
Anything else? Now, I'm going to ask for some guidance here. We're not here to make a motion. There's no motion before us. We've heard everything. Are there any other comments to the staff or developer?
Just that if there's going to be a tour of the site supported by the developer and the Mr. Dam and his associates and the Colwood staff, yeah, as soon as much lead time as possible would be great. I'd love to be able to attend.
And so certainly, Mr. Chair, staff will endeavor to work with the developer to facilitate such a tour. And I'd suggest that it would coincide with our presentation of the revised landscape plan to the commission.
Thank you. Hearing nothing further and no other business, I call for a motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you all.
Thank you.